And joining us this morning, we've got Tracy Tellman with the Texas Department of Transportation. Tracy, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us.
Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Of course, school is starting on Monday, which means the traffic around schools returns to Amarillo.
Yes, that's right. And we want to talk to parents and, all your listeners about back to school safety tips. There's a lot of things we need to be thinking about this time of year. There's a lot of changes in routine. There's lots of things that can go wrong. So it's time to start thinking about it and being prepared.
Let's talk about those tips. What are some of those great tips for parents, especially as you're coming up to school zones?
Okay. A couple of things is, one, put away your cell phone. It is against the law to be on your cell phone in a school zone. So put away the cell phone. That's number one. Number two, obey the speed limit in the school zone. Lower speed limits on purpose there because there's children, there's pedestrians, there's people coming and going, there's cars doing unpredictable things. Another thing is to make sure you use your school's designated drop-off and pick-up zone. The school has analyzed that situation, has determined the safest place for you to do that, so you want to be sure you're using that properly. Wait your turn, do what you're supposed to do. That is the safest way for you to drop off and pick up your child.
Kids always in the school zone areas, like you said, coming and going, crossing the streets, running up the sidewalks.
They're always excited about school. I think kids are more excited than we are sometimes, but they dart out between traffic. They're doing unpredictable things. Children are unpredictable anyway. And as a parent, you need to teach your child to exit the vehicle properly, to cross the street properly. If they're riding their bike, they need to do so properly. And by doing that, you're making sure your child has a much better chance of getting to school safely.
Children getting to school, I know a lot of kids do ride the bus, their parents take them, but there are a lot of kids that actually walk or bike to school.
Right.
What are some tips for parents for those kids?
Well, you need to teach your child to cross at the crosswalk. Where there's a crossing guard, that's a much better place for the child to cross. If that's not possible, always in an intersection, make sure your child knows to look left, look right, look left again. Make sure that they're making eye contact with the driver, that the vehicle sees them and stops, comes to a complete stop before that child enters the roadway. No jaywalking, no crossing in the middle of the block, none of that. If they're riding their bike, they need to do the same thing. Cross at the crosswalks, cross at intersections. Always wear a helmet. Make sure that child, if they're riding their bike when it's still dark, they need to have a flashing red light. They need to have a headlight. They need to wear reflectorized clothing.
And of course, when they're biking, the bike lanes.
Yes. If you're fortunate enough that your school is near a bike lane, make sure your child knows how to use that bike lane properly. Sidewalks are for pedestrians. The roadway and bike lanes are for bikes. So, make sure your child knows how to go. They need to ride with traffic. In Texas, a bicycle is required to follow the traffic laws, just like a car. Stop at stop signs, stop at red lights, make proper signals, those types of things.
Now, with school comes the buses, and I know as we get older, we seem to forget some of the rules that involve buses.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many times I've been on a road when a bus comes to a stop and starts flashing the red lights.
Right.
People just pull around them.
Right. And the law says you have to stop. And if you're on a roadway that's divided, you don't have to. But most of the time, it's going to be a city street or someplace where that school bus is on the same street you are. So you must stop. As long as that school bus has its flashers on and their stop paddle out, you must stop going both directions. Now, the other thing to remember is school buses always stop at railroad crossings unless there's an exempt sign on the railroad crossing, and there's not very many of those here. So if you're following a school bus, be prepared to stop. That school bus is going to stop. Now, you don't have to stay behind them at a railroad crossing. You can go around. But, just be aware that that school bus, it moves at a slower pace. It's not going to be picking up and going at the same pace you are. So, give that school bus a little room. Those are kids. It's very vulnerable cargo on there. We want to make sure that those kids get where they're going safely.
Absolutely. And of course, you don't want the ticket if you pass a bus and their lights are on.
I really don't know what that fine is, but no, you don't want that ticket. I have a lot of other things I'd rather do with my money than pay a ticket for sure.
Tracy, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.